Hey all, so I finally decided to make a tier list, but I don't really want to rattle on for a while, so I decided to make a condensed tier list, one that's kind of more digestible, where I could just get through it to the point much faster. And before we rank all the killers, have to address that add-ons cannot be considered in the ranking, because if we were to, killers like Clown or Huntress would automatically be S tier because Iridescent Head and Pinky Finger. Those add-ons will be insta down, and it would not work. Perk builds, maps, anything else also cannot be considered. We can only look at the killer's base power. We will have to assume that each killer has been mastered in their own realm, and I'm going to go in order of when the killers were released. So starting with Trapper and ending with Nemesis. First off is Trapper. In the right hands, Trapper can be very strong, but base kit without add-ons, traps are not dark. You can't carry more than one trap. It makes it very hard to set up early game. Getting trap survivors is kind of RNG at some point, and you may have games where you have no trap survivors at all. Basically M1 killer after you place all your traps. In my opinion, Trapper is C tier because he's not great, but he's also not the worst. A lot of people can do really fucking good games with Trapper, but in my mind, he's not better than C tier. All right, let's move on to Wraith. After Wraith's recent buff, making him have true invisibility from a distance and a much faster move speed, he has great mobility and much better map pressure. Cloaking allows a speed boost to catch survivors and can be very powerful. While his buff was warranted, he still isn't very high on the list, and I think he's going on C tier as well with Trapper. Move on to Billy. Billy is a great killer. His chainsaw allows for really fast mobility around the map, good map pressure, he can break walls, pallets, and down survivors in one hit with his chainsaw. His overheat mechanic can be avoided pretty easily to veteran Billy players, and overall, a very good killer, and I think he's well deservingly on A tier. Nurse is automatically S tier for me. She's one of the best killers in the game and has the highest skill ceiling in my opinion. Her blinks allow great plays to cut off survivors in the middle of loops, jungle gyms, or catching up to survivors in an open field and whatnot. She has great mobility and a very strong map control. Very deserving to be on S tier. Myers is one of the most balanced killers in the game, in my opinion. He has the ability to one down survivors once he stalks them and obtains tier 3. Once he tiers up, he not only gains a speed boost, but gives the survivors the exposed status effect. Very good map pressure, but not the best mobility. He deserves to be on B tier, I think, at most. Hag is pretty annoying to go against. I'm not a fan of facing her when I'm playing Survivor. She's overall just not a lot of fun. She can camp survivors pretty easily in basement or just on regular hooks. She can cut off survivors in the middle of loops with her traps. She can take survivors off guard from across the damn map. Like, it's ridiculous. Because she is one of the only killers left that can actually, like, get you to jump a little bit because her traps come out of nowhere. And her traps can be hard to avoid sometimes, but can be destroyed by flashlights. So I guess that's I'm kind of pro for survivors. She can be stronger to go against, but still isn't really that up there, and I'm gonna put her on B tier. Doctor is very good for info, especially across the map. His static blast, the radius is huge, makes survivors scream. It's very good for info. And his regular blast is great for stopping survivors from taking vaults, pallets. It basically doesn't allow them to do any animations for a bit. It also stops them from healing, doing totems, doing gens, opening chests, all the rigmarole, you know? It doesn't affect anyone in lockers, though, unfortunately. His power in general is very good, stopping survivors in place, so I think it's a pretty safe bet to put him on B tier. Next we have is Huntress. Huntress is one of the strongest killers in the game. Basically, she can cross-map hatchet people and just down people from super far away if your aim is good enough. She's very powerful out in the open, especially in dead zones with no pallets, and she can throw hatchets through windows and over pallets when survivors are in animation lock, kind of just getting a free hit, you know? And simply put, she's very strong when mastered and is hard to counter, especially if you can't break line of sight. So I think she's earned A tier. Next we have is Bubba. After Bubba's rework, he's very viable and actually a decent killer. With 3 charges on his chainsaw, it gives players a lot more freedom of choice when playing him. He has decent mobility and map control to say the least during loops and getting rid of pallets. I think he's on B tier. Not as good as killers like Michael, but I still think he's viable enough. Next we have is Freddy, which unfortunately is S tier. I don't like facing Freddy. He's boring. His snares are really strong. His pallets are ridiculously strong. You can't tell them apart. The snares slow you down in loops and just allow for an easy hit. He can teleport across the map to gens, gives really good map pressure and mobility. He's a cool killer. I liked playing him when he was older. Playing as him, playing against him was okay back then, but playing now, it's not fun. He's very strong, but he's one of the only killers in the game that I think you can get a 4K first try. So he's going on S tier, unfortunately. Pig. Pig comes from a dope horror franchise, Saw, but she's one of the weakest killers, which sucks because she's genuinely a cool killer. Her crouch, while it gives her the undetectable status, she's way too slow. It's not viable to crouch. Reverse bear traps only activate once generator is complete, so basically survivors can take them off before they even start. So while it is kind of good map pressure, when survivors have to go around and go search the 4 boxes and take it off, they can just take it off before. So it's very avoidable. And her dash is kind of a joke. It's not going to hit anyone anytime soon. Unless you make a really bad mistake. So she's going on D tier, which I wish she would get a rework soon. Clown is another very fun killer to play, but a very weak one, which is why I'm putting him on D tier. His slowdown purple bottles are good for ending chases. You can partially blind survivors, hinder them, catch up to them pretty well. His piss bottles, not too usable, because, you know, survivors can just speed themselves up by walking through it too. It's probably just best to throw it down when you're picking up survivors so you can get to the hook faster. But other than that, it's not very good because it's a delayed reaction when you throw it on the ground. So D tier at best. You can't go any lower than that. Spirits, unfortunately, S tier. I don't like her. I don't think any of y'all like her. She's not fun to go against. She has little to no counterplay at all. I wish they would change her up. Her add-ons are ridiculous, even though we're not even looking at them. But phasing to catch up to survivors, absolutely wild. It's way too strong. S tier. She does require some skill, but definitely not as much as Nurse, I think. Next we have is Legion, and I think we all know where that's going. Right to D. Not very strong. Again, fun to play, but annoying to go against. Still super weak. Yeah, he has good mobility, get around the map with Frenzy really quickly, and sometimes pressure with the whole men bar. He can traverse the map pretty well. Injuring survivors, moving on to the next one. The only other pressure I can see is him hopping over vaults, window vaults, and pallets. Other than that, not much. He gets killer instinct from hitting one survivor and can find the next, which is good. But again, like, chances are that you're gonna down everyone at the beginning of the game by, you know, making them men. It's not gonna happen. So he's not too strong of a player, which is why I'm putting him on D. Next, we got Plague. I'm not a big fan of Plague, playing as her or against her. But her chapter did bring in Head On, so, I mean, like, that's pretty good. She's mediocre at best. She can infect survivors and contaminate gens, lockers, you know, vaults in general, which is good. But survivors can cleanse as much as they want. And they can force her to use the power when all the fountains are used, even if she doesn't want to use it then. Corrupt Purge is, you know, the red version of just Vile Purge, and it can hit survivors and injure them. But you can get knocked out of this power by getting stunned. So it's not too strong. It can be avoidable. Break line of sight and you counter Plague. She's not too good, but, you know, she's not the worst. I think she's C tier. Ghostface. Ghostface is one of the cooler killers in the game, but is Myers, but weaker, which is unfortunate. You can only expose one person at a time. Night Shroud does allow him to go, you know, a little bit faster, and you can crouch and whatnot. Teabag the whole haha funny, which is I'm not bad. He's a fun killer. And he gets killer instinct to anyone who reveals him, but not too strong. I think, again, I'm not going to put him on Myers tier because he's just weaker. I think he's on C tier. Demo. Demo is another very fun killer in the game, but mediocre, unfortunately, because he is cool. His portals allow him very good map mobility, getting around very quickly. It gives you a lot of freedom, the portals. You can place them wherever you want on the map and kind of just set up, essentially. But in the grand scheme of things, not too strong. But I don't think he's as weak as Pig, Clown, or Legion, so I'll put him on C tier. Next, we have is Oni. Oni's also another fun killer to play, and it's kind of like Billy, but maybe a little bit weaker, and I don't think it's fun. He's still fun, but I don't think he's as much fun. You have to collect blood orbs so you can, you know, get blood rage or blood fury and run across the map super fast, one down people, break pallets. I think it's a very balanced power. He's fun, and he's kind of scary to go against, you know. Not too bad going against. He has good map pressure when in his rage and whatnot, and I don't think he's on B tier. I honestly think he's on A tier. Not as good as Billy. Deathslinger, who is next, he's FPS, man. He's just a shooter, you know? He can grab survivors from far away, bring them in, hit them, do it again. If you can't even hit your shot or bring them in close enough, you can just take a stun, make them mend, and it works out anyway. If you can hit your shots, you're kind of really fucking deadly. It's hard to go against a Deathslinger who knows what they're doing. But then again, it's kind of like Huntress and Nurse. Just break a line of sight and you'll be fine. Not a lot of people like going against him, and with his small terror radius, he makes really good map pressure. And I have to put him on A tier. He's just a very strong killer. For next, we have Pyramid Head, which, you know, everyone loves to simp over. Don't blame him. He's similar to Huntress, and chases pretty quickly through loops. You can predict shot and get them through walls and whatnot, which is pretty cool. Usually you want to save it for when they're in an animation lock over pallets or windows. You can save time by avoiding hooking a survivor or just like sending them to a cage or just mooring them on the ground if they've already been hooked twice. But, you know, they have to be afflicted by his little strawberry jam trail, which gives him killer instinct whenever someone steps in it. Overall, I think Pyramid Head is pretty good. I think he's B tier. Next on our list is Blight. Blight is going to be the last killer who's on S tier. If mastered, he is really fucking deadly. He is super strong. He's got a really high skill ceiling, but definitely not as high as Nurse. Nurse, I think, has the highest one. He has really good mobility, pretty good pressure, and a skilled Blight will end chases very fast. And I think he's very balanced with his charges, his cooldown, overall very good. Next we got is Twins. Now, if I were ranking this as how much I hate every killer, I would automatically put Twins on D because I hate them. They're very annoying to go against. You can easily camp basement with Victor or Charlotte. You have very good mobility. You have very good map pressure because it's essentially two killers in one game. You can just put someone over there, and while they're sleeping, go to Victor or come back. You know, it's wild. But Victor traps survivors in lockers, attach them himself to survivors and make them, you know, fucking scream the entire time, give away their location. He can just down them in general and then give killer instinct to survivors nearby, to Charlotte. They're very easy killer to get 4Ks on. And again, they're the most hated, and I completely understand why, and I don't like them either. But if we're looking at this objectively, I'm sad to say that they're A tier. It sucks because they are not fun to go against. Trickster, automatically D tier. Very weak. He's kind of annoying to go against sometimes, but I think he's a genuinely cool killer. One of the coolest killers added to DBD in general. Like, you know, he mutters in Korean whenever he gets hit. In general, when he hits people, he has like a little chuckle. He's like cool. He's genuinely cool, but he's very weak. It just feels like Plague and Legion combined for the laceration meter. You have to hit so many throwing knives on survivors just to injure them one time. Like, he's essentially a much weaker version of Huntress, and I don't see why you would pick Trickster over Huntress other than his cool factor, you know? So it sucks. Cool killer, but bad killer, you know? And then last we got is Nemesis. And they really fucking nailed this chapter. A lot of fun, this killer. He's not the strongest. I think he's pretty average, which is why I'm going to put him on B tier. He's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. If survivors didn't get speed boost when getting infected, I think he'd be a little bit stronger. Zombie AI is sometimes questionable, but it does give good info. You know, when zombies are reaching their hands out on the map, you can see that in a white aura, and you'll know, okay, a survivor is near this specific zombie. Maybe they should have more zombies in a buff. I'm not sure. I think he deserves this spot on B. Pretty good map pressure and decent mobility. Not the best. Anyway, I think he's a really cool killer, and this is kind of like where I end my tier list. I want to know if you guys like agree with this or if you have any differing opinions. You know, we all have opinions. It's all good. Just let me know in the comments. And other than that, go follow my Twitch, Twitter if you haven't. And join the Discord if you want. And again, if you guys enjoyed it, subscribe, I guess. Road to 20K. Anyway, I appreciate y'all watching, and